sflogicninja here, or you can call me David Earl, I don't care. Throat's a little hoarse. Alright, so what's this ARP swisher thing that I gave you guys? Well, right now we're in screen set 8. So if you hit screen set 1, if you're in Logic that is, hit screen set 1 and there's our arrange window, right? And I have like a electric piano there. So you guys will want to have a software instrument for this to work correctly. So I'm going to go back to screen set 8. Now it's very important whenever you use an arpeggiator in Logic, Logic has to be in play. So I'm going to hit play, and now if I hold a chord, when none of these buttons here are selected, then the chord that I play will I can just, no big deal. If you want to hide some of these cables, it's not really important for you guys to know how I cabled it. So you can go to View and hide the cables. And that way it's a little more manageable. Alright, so these buttons turn the arpeggiator on. Now we're still in play, so if I hit 8th notes and hold a chord, it starts to arpeggiate. Now I deselect it and I go to 16th notes. So that works pretty well. Now I can also switch the direction. If I go to ARP up and down and select 16th note, you'll hear that it's going up and down in 16th notes. So I'll deselect that, I'll turn this back to ARP up, hit stop. Now, if we go back to the arrange window, which is screen set 1, and I go into record, and I'm going to go back to screen set 8, now I'm going to turn the arpeggiator on. Now it will have recorded those notes as actual notes in my piano roll editor. So there they are. Those are the arpeggiated notes. Now, the arpeggiator is a little off because, you know, I'm a little off. So if I go back to the environment window, if I choose all of these arpeggiators at the same time, and I say snap to, I can snap to 8th notes, I can snap to 16th notes, maybe I'll snap to 8th notes just for fun. So again, and this is where it might be handy to actually view the cables, if I select within, if I select within here, I can go snap to 8th notes, go down here, snap to 8th notes, select these, snap to 8th notes. Boy, I made a lot of these things. Snap to 8th notes. Aren't you guys glad that I can upload a video that's longer than 10 minutes? Snap to 8th notes. Okay, there we go. So now what should happen is when it arpeggiates, it should snap to 8th notes, which means even if I'm slightly off, it'll quantize my performance. So I'm going to hide those cables again, go back to the arrange window, hit record, go back to screen set 8, so there's my normal chords, and now I'll put the 16th notes on. So that snaps to 8th note, so it's always going to be on the beat when I hit the note. There it is. Okay, so slight tweak to the arpeggiator. I'll give that to you as homework. I'll also resave it to the iDisk if you guys don't want to go through all that. Now, snapping back and forth between screen set 8 and screen set 1 is kind of a pain, right? So I had mentioned in my notes here in the instructions, if you pull it up, that I have continuous controller 21 and I have continuous controller 20 that are assigned to various things. In this case, I have the ARP resolution and the ARP direction. Okay? So what does that mean exactly? Well, that means that if I turn this knob that I have on my axiom between 0 and 9, I get the different arpeggiator resolutions, which is basically the same as touching these buttons right here. Okay? Now, here's the thing about continuous controllers. They go between 0 and 127, so that's kind of a pain. Now, to take you guys way back, we talked about a transform window. Okay, that means if I have a region with a bunch of MIDI information in it, I open up the transform window and I can say, take all of these notes and turn them into controller information. Or I can say, take these pitches and limit them to a certain range. There's a lot of stuff that I can do to manipulate the MIDI destructively, and that's pretty cool. But in the environment window, I can actually use a type of transform that happens in real time. So, for a lot of you out there who have Axioms or Axiom Pros, videos on the way, I know, the Axiom 61 gives you the ability to set the range of a fader or set the range of a rotary knob. Here I've got my old clunky, well, clunky, but it's still very, very operational. If I'm sending continuous controller 21 from a rotary knob, the rotary knob has a throw of 0 to 127. So what do I do? Well, I go New, Transformer. Okay? Now what the transformer is going to do is it's going to take the MIDI data that comes into it and it's going to process it. Now conditions and operations are exactly the same as the video that I had before. So since I'm dealing with continuous controller data, I'm going to say status equals control, and I'm going to say the specific ones that I set up where resolution was 20 and ARP direction is 21. So I'm going to assign this data byte 1 to be 20, and then all of the data byte 2. So the conditions are, what are we affecting? We're affecting controller 20. What are we going to do with it? Well, what we can do, I'm going to view my cables again. Okay, so this transformer, I'm going to go up to the inspector over here. I'm going to call this CC20. And I'm going to actually put this before everything. It's going to come directly out from sum directly into my transform, which goes into my monitor, which goes everywhere else. Okay? So now what should happen is the processes that I apply. I'm going to turn my rotary knob here, right? And you can see it's going between right here. It's going between 0 and 127, and I really need it to go between 0 and 9. So what I do with the transformer is I say data byte 2, which is the 0 to 127 aspect of using a continuous controller. I can divide, and if I divide by 15, let's see, so controller 21 is controlling my resolution. I've got it up to 8, but I need to get a 9. So let's see. There we go. So if I'm dividing by 14, that's just taking the 0 to 127 and dividing it by 14, which gives me a range of 0 to 9. When I'm at the highest end of the throw. So that's for 21. Now I just happen to, it's kind of like a baking show where they go and they cook the thing and they go, hey, look, I just happen to have one ready. There it is, continuous controller 20 and continuous controller 21. And I'm running out of room, so I'm going to take all this stuff and I'm going to move it over to the right. You always grab things by the name when you're in the environment window. Now here's the deal. It's not going to be touching. According to these rules, apply operation and let non-matching events pass through. That means the MIDI is going to go in. It's going to process only controller 20 because that's the condition that I set. The condition just says, hey, what are we going to mess with? And then the operations are, what are we going to do to it, right? So control 20 is being divided by 24, and controller 21 is being divided by 15. Okay. And if I look at my monitor here, I should be able to see those values. Oh, it's 0 to 8, not 0 to 9 that I wanted to go to. Sorry about that. So 0 to 8, because that is my ARP resolution. Okay, so those are the buttons that affect resolution, right? Now I can control it with this knob. That's pretty cool. And then on the second one, I'm actually changing the ARP direction. So down below here, if we look at this, it'll be saying ARP up, ARP down, ARP up down 2, auto, ARP auto, ARP random. So this is changing the type of arpeggiation that we're doing, or the direction of the arpeggiation. So anyway, that's basically how all that works, and what that allows me to do then is go back to the arrange window, and when I'm recording, I can actually switch this thing in real time. So that's pretty handy, and that's how the whole thing works. Now I can still use the buttons if I want. These buttons would probably work a little better with pads maybe, because you can hold the pad down and when you let go it'll toggle it off, which is kind of cool. But you can also use sliders and knobs and things like that as well. So that is the ARP switcher in a nutshell, and as you saw, it'll print everything out in the arrange window, which is pretty cool. Now if I turn my knobs all the way to 0, I should be able to, even if I'm in play, I get chords. I just turned the knob and I got it to switch resolutions. So that's pretty cool. So that's assigning them to knobs. Now you could assign them to buttons if you want to. That's totally fine. So that's the ARP switcher. So I can select any software instrument and this ARP switcher will work, which is pretty cool. It's just a little gift because it had been a while since I talked to you guys. Now the other thing that I wanted to talk about is I wanted to go into my Apple loops here, if I have any. I do. Look at that. I'm on my laptop. So I've got these drums, right? I'm going to drag them into the arrange window. Now what's cool is Logic can actually read the tempo information from WAV files and from Apple loops. So I'll hit yes. Now, there's a couple of really awesome things that you can do. And some of this I may have hit on before, but I wanted to come back to it again. If you want to create a sampler instrument in Logic, you can chop this up into little bits and then take the regions and put them into the sampler, right? So we've already talked about using strip silence. Okay, that's all right. Used to be the way to do things. The other thing we can do is we can go into the sample edit window, and I can actually take a little piece here. I'll listen to it, and I could hit Control R, and that makes a new region. And that region pops up in my audio bin, and I can just drag it into the arrange window, right? Now if I wanted to, I could create a sampler instrument out of all these individual little regions that I cut. So if you're a real chemist, if you're a real scientist, you're going to go in and you're going to take your sample and you're going to cut it up into little individual regions, and then you're going to toss them all onto a track. Then once they're on the track, you're going to control click on it. Oop, not fade. Yeah, make it large enough. You control click, and then you say convert to sampler track, right? Because if you have multiple regions, you can now very easily create a new sampler track. Now, new thing. Back here we have this drum loop, and the cool thing about this drum loop, or the cool thing about Logic using FlexTime, is that it will automatically detect transients in your file. What does that mean? Well, basically it's going to go through and you remember what I just did? I like swept over a piece of the audio. I hit Control R and that put it in my bin, which I could drag into the arrange window. I'm sure you guys are going to get a kick out of that. But there's this automated stuff going on in Logic now that's pretty amazing. So if I control click and I go to convert to sampler track, I can do it by regions. That's what I did before, where I made a bunch of little regions and then I said, hey, you know, put this in there. Or I can do it by transient markers. Now what transient markers is going to do is it's going to take this drum loop, it's going to break it up into little tiny pieces, and it's going to create a sampler instrument. It's essentially like, if you guys have used Recycle, it's doing the same kind of thing. So between C3 and G8 is fine. The access instrument name, Live edgy drums, why not? Okay. So first it analyzes the file, then it looks for all the transient markers, then it's going to create a sampler instrument, and then it's going to make a track with the sampler instrument and the MIDI that's been derived from the Apple loop. There it is. If I hit, I can play the individual. So that's pretty cool. I can play the individual files. But if I solo this MIDI, it's going to sound exactly like the drum loop that we just had. Not only that, but since it's kind of like a Rex file, I should be able to change tempo. And it follows it. It's a little janky, but or I speed it up. But the main thing is that we're using a sampler now. So we have a sampler that's playing all of the individual little pieces. I can turn a filter on. I can use my pitch bend. So that's pretty slick. Now, I did that all with an Apple loop, which I didn't think it would work with an Apple loop, but it did, which is kind of cool. The other thing that you can do is, under track, there's this thing that called drum replacing or doubling. If I click on that, what it will try to do is it will try to pick out the transients that are the snare or the kick or the hi-hat. But essentially what you can do is, if you have like a bunch of multi-track drums, and your drummer had a really great feel but didn't have a good sound, you can go through with the drum replacer and replace everything that he's got. It basically lays out a MIDI file based on the transients that are within the region, and then assigns it to whatever note you want to assign it to, which is right here. Cool. So I'm going to cancel that for now. There's some other stuff I want to talk about with flex time and all that jazz, but I think you guys, between the Arpeggiator thing that I just talked about, and the transform thing, and the drum replacing, and the creating a sampler instrument from transients, did I talk to you about speed fades yet? This is pretty cool. Essentially, if I take a fade tool and I go over here, that can be a fade. Or if I control click on it, it can be a speed up. So that's essentially kind of like a record start and stop. So then if I go on the back side, control click, slow down. I love that. That's so cool. I think I may have gone over that already when I said the things that I love about Logic 9, but there you go. It's all good. So I think that's enough for you guys for now. Okay, that's probably enough about that. So I hope you guys are having a great time. If you get a chance, check out The Return on Xbox Live. That was the Halo project that we just finished up over at Pyramid. And until our next cartoon, ciao.